Well, welcome to the Peak District Viking Q&A. I'll tell you what, you guys are giving me some belters of questions. I've had well over 30 questions. So I'll split them into 3 chunks. I've got sort of things about me and my personal life, things about my love of motorcycles, and then thirdly, about the Peak District and the great outdoors. So I'll split into 3 chunks like that. I will warn you, if you are a similar age to me, which I think most of you probably are, and you've watched the 2 Ronnies, well, you remember Ronnie Corbett at the end, where he used to sit down at the end and go, I'm going to tell you a story.
Tonight, I would like, if I may, to relate a very funny story.
Well, be prepared, because I will ramble on off to all sorts of tangents. So just a warning there. So we'll start off with a personal life. First question is from Oliver Phillips. Thank you, Oliver. They've asked, where did I grow up? Well, I'm actually Derby born and bred. I was born in 1967 in October in the old Nightingale maternity home on London Road near the old DRI, if any of you know that. Some of you may have even been born there yourself. So I was born there, lived in Derby for most of my life up until probably about 2010, and then I went on a bit of a rampage around the country, living in all sorts of places. A lot in the Peak District, Scotland a lot as well, but including Shetland, but finally ended up back in the Peak District, which I know and love. Has asked, what do I do for a day job? Well, my official title at the moment is Head of Business Transformation, which sounds a bit pompous, but I started out life as an apprentice at Rolls-Royce back in the 1980s. So I did a lot of work there in the laboratories, is where I started straight from school, laboratory apprenticeship, and then ended up in the maintenance division and various different roles there. Got involved in improvement programs, IT systems. I was a technical manager for a while, and then the last few years at Rolls-Royce I was rolling out an IT program across the whole world. So I worked in Brazil, Hong Kong, Singapore, you name it, I probably went there. And then I left Rolls-Royce in, when was that, 2009. Had an interesting year off. I won't tell you about that too much. And then in 2010, I basically started working at the company I do now, and I've had various roles. I started out as a service engineer on the Rolls-Royce fleet, then again technical manager, and now I implement large complex projects. And at the moment, that's involving an implementation of an IT system across the whole of the UK. So yeah, that's what I do. I'm also a chartered engineer, so I'm a fellow in the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. So that involves me involved in industry focus groups, things like that, but also interviewing and mentoring new chartered engineers. So people who want to become a chartered engineer, I'm one of the people who interview them. But I also mentor them in our own company. We haven't got enough engineers in the UK. I think we're about 100,000 short is what the current forecast is. People seem to want to do social media and stuff like that these days. They don't want to be engineers, so spend a lot of time doing that. So that's my day job. Mark Bryan. Well, Mark, thanks again. I know Mark, we're both in motorcycle clubs. And Mark has asked, who is my most inspirational educator who gave me my passion? Well, I'll be honest with you, that is my dad. My dad, he used to take us out fishing and all sorts. Sometimes he didn't even know how to do it himself, but because we wanted to do it, he would learn and then teach us. But also, he was a scout leader. So when I was in Scouts, he took over leadership of the Scout Pack, Scout Troop, not Pack, Pack's Cubs. And basically, taught us how to read maps, how to navigate, how to camp, how to survive, how to light fires, etc., which really gave me that passion for the outdoors, be it hiking or camping. And I've been in that sort of mode ever since. I guess other inspirational people were, there was a guy in the Derby Mountain Rescue at the time. I think he headed it up. His name was Steve Hilditch. He was a real character, but I really did enjoy the work that they did, and they still do, and the volunteering that they do. And then there's the usual YouTube influencers like Andy Beavers. I really like his videos, although I've not seen any for a while. I'm not sure what's going off there, whether he's had enough or who knows. Paul Mesner, Patrick Dickinson, you can go through them all, can't you? But my real inspiration is my father. Denise Mardell. Denise is a long-time follower. She's been here probably since day dot, I think. And basically she's asked me, why did I use the Peak District Viking for the YouTube channel? What inspired that? Well, there's a couple of things. Obviously, I live in the Peak District, and I've lived in and around the Peak District a lot over the years in various places. I've lived in Crouch, I've lived in Ambergate, I've lived in Brassington, lived in Wild Boar Clough, or Wilbur Clough as they call it, and then finally we've settled in Castleton for the last few years. So that's where the Peak District comes. Obviously, I'm really passionate about the Peak District. It's really close to my heart. It's a place I really love. And then the Viking bit leads into a question from Ruth Broughton as well, which is a similar one, and that is, have I ever done any DNA test? And I did, and I found out that I had some Viking heritage, about 12% I think, and mainly from Norway, a little bit from Denmark. The rest of my mix is typical Anglo-Saxon, English people across the Midlands, but also quite a big chunk of Welsh, because on my mother's side, they hailed from Wales originally. So yeah, that's my sort of DNA makeup, and from all of that came the Peak District Viking, which was actually Mrs. Viking's idea. She worked weekends, I was working in the week, so I was left to my own devices at the weekend, and the devil makes work for idle hands and all that sort of stuff. So she goes, well, why don't you... I was taking photographs, so I was starting to go out hiking and not quite back into the camping at that point. And then she said, well, why don't you film them? Film the routes, you can share them. I had a couple of friends who can't get out anymore through illness and age and stuff like that, so why don't you film them? So I did, and that's how it was born, and steady progression since. A couple of questions from Sylvia Rowley. I hope it's pronounced that right, Sylvia. Funny story, I met Sylvia and her husband Dave maybe a year, 18 months ago I think it was. We were over in Chapel on the Frith shopping, and all of a sudden this bloke was hammering on the window. Well, it sounded like to me he was hammering on the window. I was poised to jump out and go toe to toe because an instant reaction. And then the Peak District Viking, we just seen you. We follow your channel, and they're from Norfolk, but they come across the Peak District quite regularly, camping and hiking and whatever. So yeah. So Sylvia's question is, where in the world, if I had the choice, would I like to live? So for me, that's quite simple. It's England. I've lived all over the world, Brazil, the Far East. I've worked all over the place as well. I've lived in England. I've travelled to Wales. I've seen a lot of this country. So of all the countries in the world, England, and whereabouts in England, the Peak District. I'm very lucky to live in the one place, if I had the choice, I would live. So there you go. Second question is, what's my favourite tipple? Well, if anyone who knows me, and people who've known me for a long time, I was a big drinker, and I mean a big drinker. 2-3 day benders was, not unknown, and that links into the second part of these videos about the motorcycles and motorcycle clubs. But I don't drink a lot now. Occasionally I do, and to remind myself of why I don't. But my favourite drink was real ale. I shall love real ale, all the varieties, particularly IPAs. I really like those light, sort of stronger pints. But I started to get gout, which if anyone's had gout, it ain't great. It's very painful. So and it's inherited a lot now. They reckon that it's genetic rather than lifestyle. Lifestyle's a contributor. So my dad had it, my granddad had it, so I've inherited that. So I don't tend to drink. So if I do, I know I'll get gout. But occasionally I do, just to remind myself. I do not touch spirits very often. Very dangerous with me and spirits. I tend to get a total blank, wake up covered in blood going, what the hell's going off? So, that's my favourite tipple, Sylvia. Next one is from Terry Brooks. He's asked a few questions, but this one pertains to me on a personal level. And that is, what are your favourite bands? Well, I can answer that one straight away. My favourite band of all time, I've got a massive tattoo on the back from one of their album covers, is Motorhead. I absolutely love Motorhead. They were the first band I ever saw live in the 80s, and they were so loud, and just the energy, and obviously Lemmy, he was like a god to me. I have met him briefly once in a pub in Nottingham after a gig, and he was a bit like Ozzy Osbourne, real genuine, down to earth, almost like the fame had never changed him. So yeah, Motorhead, number one, love them. All the classic rock stuff, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple, any metal band, Black Sabbath. They're all my typical bands. More recent bands, I love the Dropkick Murphys. Mrs. Viking got me into them, and we actually went and saw Five Finger Death Punch, and I found that was really good. So I'm quite open to different music, but ultimately hardcore heavy metal. Next question, Sylvia's other half, Dave. He's after, have I used my white trainer cleaner lately? Don't know what that's about, Dave. I don't wear white trainers, mate. There's a joke in there. Comment below or whatever and let me know what the joke is, because I don't think I'm quite in on that, unless you mean the white trainer brigade who go up Mam Tour every weekend. And he's asked my favourite tipple, which Sylvia asked as well, which I answered previously. But yeah, thanks for that one, Dave, and let me know what the joke is. I don't think I quite got that one. So, another one from Steve Belkin. How long did it take you to grow your impressive beard? There's a story, Steve. So, 16 years next year in April. The funny story is, I had quite a big beard, because I was obviously in a bike club at the time, and I went for a job interview, and I shaved it right down to the bone, thinking, you know what, you can't go in looking like that. Walked in to the interview. Oh, I used to, all right, Steve, when can you start? Monday. Okay, I could have an even longer, more impressive beard. So yeah, that's the story of that beard. 16 years in the making so far. Second section is motorcycles and bikes. So again, I'm going to go through these bit about motorcycles, how I got into them, and then also motorcycle clubs. So Sylvia has asked us a couple of questions. What would be my ideal motorbike? How did I get into bikes? And do I ride in winter? So first one, my ideal motorbike. To be honest with you, I think I've got it now. I've got a Yamaha XV 1700 Warrior. Absolutely love it. It's almost like a cross between a cruiser and a sports bike. It's an R1 front end, an MT-01 based engine, but it's in a cruiser. Handles well, really comfortable, and it's got a lot of torque. So, I can't fault it. But before, I always used to love Suzuki Bandits. I love Bandits. They were cheap, they were quick, and, you could give some of these sports riders a good run for the money. I've had a lot of bikes over the years, but Bandits was my real favourite. But yeah, I think I've got my ideal bike now. So how did I get into bikes? Again, blame my dad. I think his logic was to my mum, if we get them into bikes now, they'll get it out of the system by the time they're old enough to ride on the road. Well, that didn't go well, did it? So yeah, the first bike we ever rode around a field was the old Honda C90. Blatting around on that with my brother, and then my dad built us a trials bike because we liked sort of trials riding. But he basically had a Tiger Cub frame with a BSA Banter engine in it. It weighed a ton, and the seat was a plank of wood with a bit of foam and a plastic bag over it. But great times, and I've been in and out of bikes over the years. And when I got back into my 40s, I got back into it a lot more. But yeah, I love bikes. It's just the smell and all the engineering stuff about it. I'm not particularly great hands-on engineer, but my dad had us stripping bikes down, rebuilding them, great stuff. But yeah, so my dad was my inspiration on getting into bikes, so you can blame him for that. Do I ride in winter? I used to, a lot, especially when I was in a club. We always used to ride all the way year round. Now I'm a bit older. I tend to feel it a little bit more, not so much. If it's a nice sunny day, I probably will get out. But at one time, I would ride everywhere, no matter what the weather, come wind, rain or shine. Back in the day, I remember going on a club ride out, and New Year's Day we used to do one, and we all got to Matlock Bath covered in a sheet of ice. That was the best bacon, cob and cup of tea I've ever had in my life, I think. Moving on to clubs now, Lisa Cameron and Terry Brooks have both asked a question. Was I in a 1% club? Simple answer, no. However, I was in a few clubs, a couple of clubs. If you know much about bike clubs, there's a bit of a hierarchy. Front patch, side patch, back patch, 1%er. I was in a side patch for a few years called The Usual Suspects. Still got the tattoo, don't know if you can see it, the U and the S. Good times. They were affiliated to the Outlaws. And then we got patched up to a back patch, which was the Black Pistons. So they're the official support club to the Outlaws, who are a 1% club, who are the 1% club to my mind. So just that little notch below. Very serious. There were rules. I love that sort of time. It was wild. Believe me, I won't go into anything on this video in case I incriminate anybody, but great times. It's a very straight honest lifestyle. It's all about respect, integrity, loyalty, that brotherhood. Any time I've ever seen anything like that anywhere else is probably the military. I'm not been in the military, but you get a lot of military guys join motorcycle clubs for that camaraderie, that loyalty, that brotherhood. The fact you can ring someone up no matter what, and the boys will be there to help out whatever the issue is. So it has some great parties. I mean, great parties, but we'll leave that where it is. If you know anything about bike clubs and motorcycle clubs, you know what goes off. I'm in a small club now with some guys I've known for 15, 20 years, I think. Really tight, good old school bikers. We still reminisce and have some good times and get out on bikes. This is a great one. Like I said, love a good yarn. Carl and me were, in fact, when I probated for my first club, Carl was my mentor. So he sort of, I probated them for however long it was, quite a while, and he was my mentor. So he made sure I learned how it all worked and whatever. But Carl's question: why are my socks famous in Tewkesbury? So we went down to Tewkesbury to a pub for a bike rally. We went on the Thursday, came back the Sunday with a club called Rebels MC. They were proper lads. So we rode down the Thursday. Now, if you know anything about old school bikers, I went down in just the clothes I had. I didn't take a change of clothes. It was me and the bike and a tent, simple as that, because most of the weekend we'll be drinking and whatever. So anyway, on the way down, we got soaked. I wore army boots, had my socks on, soaked. If anyone knows me well, they know my feet don't deal with that particularly well. I end up with something like trench foot. So my feet were minging. So Thursday and Friday, we had a lot to drink. If anyone's watching this from that party, remember the Bible and the caravan, I'll say no more. So anyway, by the time we got to Saturday lunchtime, I'd had these socks on for 2 days. I'd not slept a great deal, been drinking for 2 days, and we were sitting outside the pub, nice sunny day, and then they go, drinking competition. And I thought, I'm up for that. I can drink quickly. So we went up, stood in a line, probably maybe half a dozen, 8 of us, maybe something like that. And the guy gave us all a bottle of cider and said, well, basically the first person to drink the cider first wins the competition, which I think the prize was more alcohol. Anyway, nothing's that straightforward at bike rallies, is it? So then he said, right, take your right shoe off or boot and take your sock off and put it over the neck of the bottle. And you can imagine what I was thinking. Crusty, smelly, disgusting sock. Put it over the bottle. And then he said, then pass it to the guy on your right. And this guy on my right, I felt so sorry for him. He had to drink through my sock. Next to me was this guy who was very smartly dressed and not, probably just a visitor to the pub who thought he'd take part. His socks were perfumed. So I necked that, and this poor bloke next to me was gagging and all sorts, trying to drink through this crusty biker's sock. And then I never saw him again at the rally. I don't know if he ended up in a hedge somewhere very ill, but yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a cracking one, Carl. Back to bikes. And Terry, what bike did I ride back in the day in the club? What do I ride now? And what do I think of green laning? Well, I'll try and answer them as quickly as I can. I rode all sorts back in the day, but mainly bandits. So they were my favourite. Sit up and beg. Mark 1 Bandit was the best. They were lunatic machines, but cheap if you threw it down the road. What do I ride now? Like I said earlier, a Yamaha Warrior XV 1700, cracking bike. Green laning, I'm happy with it if people stick to the green lanes. So, there's quite clear guidance on what those byways are. Byways open to all traffic, I think they call them. So I'm quite happy if people stick to them. What I'm not so, and I've seen it a few times, is people on bikes coming down what essentially are footpaths. That's a no-no for me. So if people follow the rules, Terry, I'm absolutely fine with it. I used to do a lot of off-roading myself in my youth. We used to go over old coal workings and stuff like that. But green laning, if you stick to the rules and where you should and shouldn't, should go, I'm fine with that. Idiots who go around in masks, popping wheelies down streets and, down footpaths and stuff like that, I'm not a big fan of. Last chapter is the Peak District. great outdoors, hiking, camping, that sort of thing. So, a question here from David Smith. What is my number one item of camping gear that I always take with me? Tough one, tent, obviously. But if I had to think of what gadget I just love, it's got to be the flex tail air pump. Gosh, there's nothing worse than getting there and then getting your airbed out and having to blow it up or use one of them inflatable sacks. This little flex tail pump, you pop it on, and in a minute, that thing's blown up. Absolutely mint little gadget. It's only about that big. Love them. I did a video on it somewhere, but yeah, bizarrely, that's the number one gadget I love. The rest of it, standard fare in it, you know, sleeping mat, your sleeping bag, your tent, your cooking gear, you know. But that number one, that little thing that just makes it an extra edge, is the flex tail pump. Just check this name here. So it's Glenn and Mandy Hassel and Cosmic Kid 205 off YouTube, one off Facebook. They both asked, what if I had the power, what would I do to improve things in the Peak District, or what top 3 things would I do? That's a good one, really. I love that people will stop littering, whether we have more enforcement, we could do something about that, we could educate people more. You know, those two elements go hand in hand, educate people, but then you need consequences. If you could solve that problem of litter picking, then, you know, and I had the power to, and the resources to ensure it was enforced, you know, drones maybe, I don't know, whatever, then I would absolutely do that. Litter picking is my pet hate. Coupled with that is people having fires. You know, imagine if you had a drone with like a water canister and you could just go on and put it out or something like that. But yeah, same again with fires in summer or any time of the year, to be honest. You want an open fire, you know, go to a place where you're allowed to have fires, where it's in a safe environment and it's all done properly. So fires and litter picking, big. If I could improve them, I would. And the other one, which leads on to a question from, I think, Steve Belkin. I think that's how you pronounce your name, Steve. I've met Steve a couple of times, bumped into him in Castleton because he's an avid camper and hiker. His parking, absolutely horrendous. You've seen my stickers, I'll put a picture up, haven't you? I stick them on cars all the time around here. People are just so entitled and think they can just park where the bloody hell they like and the rules don't apply to them. So if I could fix that, again, by making sure we have enough enforcement, but coupled with that, and it's a question Steve raised, was if we had more car parking in places like Mamtor at the bottom there, do you think that would help alleviate the horrendous parking on the roads? Or would it still, people still park like idiots? I think it might reduce it, Steve, I think. But there's always going to be that minority. I've overheard them in a pub once. Well, we'll just pay the fine. If enough of us are in a car, it's about the same price as bloody parking anyway. We'll just park where we want and pay the fine. That's the attitude of some people, and I still think you're going to have that minority. The other option is that you have like a travel hub. I think they've proposed that before, and they do have them elsewhere, where people can park and then get regular shuttle buses to the hotspots. So I don't know, if there was one in Hope, for example, you could get a shuttle bus to Edale, you could get a shuttle bus up to Mamtor, you know, you could sort of go somewhere central and just maybe park up and then get a shuttle bus for a reasonable fee. That's another option. That is another option that I think possibly could be, because you don't want the landscape blighted with car parks everywhere. So you've got to be a bit flexible. The other one is, you know, during peak periods in summer, maybe you allow farmers a bit more leeway on applying to use a field as a car park temporarily. I mean, that happens in Castleton quite a bit, that in summer a few farmers open up and charge you £5 a day. Could someone do something like that up there? So there's options there, Steve, but I still think you're going to get a minority of twats, basically, who will just do what they want, when they want, where they want, and think they're immune to the rules and regulations that the rest of us have to live by. So, Mark Cox. Met Mark and his lovely wife Jane when we were on holiday in Turkey, and we've sort of kept in touch. He sent me that little stone stack thing from Canada. Great sense of humour. He's a biker too, so a bit of a connection there. But he's read somewhere that there's over 26,000 miles of dry stone walls, enough to go around the earth in the Peak District. Well, yeah, Mark, that is correct. I think it is 26,000 miles from memory, enough to go around the world at least once. So, I mean, that's amazing, isn't it, to think how many there are.
and who built them all and where did the stone all come from. But yeah, you see them everywhere, don't you? But yeah, 26,000 miles. And then the next part of his question was, do you think there's any left? Now these idiots have been building stone stacks out of them. Good point, mate. Luckily, that seems to have died down a bit up on the Great Ridge. I was up there just a couple of days ago, and there's none at all. Now, I did those viral videos, and then basically a D&V group, I assume, saw it, and they went and placed all the stones back in the line of the wall. Didn't rebuild the wall, they just put them back in a nice, neat line. That seems to have done the trick. You know, whether that's a combination of what they've done so it looks neater and tidier, and the message that I got out, because that went a bit crazy, didn't it, on TV. Hopefully a bit of combination of the two, but not seeing many up there now. What the odd one, but you can live with that, can't you? Not a field of thousands. So I think they're safe, Mark. I think the dry stone walls are safe.
Martin Turner, he's asked, do I think Ivar the Boneless is buried in Repton? I've looked into that because that's an interesting question, you know, and you've seen Ivar the Boneless in the TV series Vikings. Now, the Great Army did get down to Repton and did camp there. And so there is some historical evidence that he was in the area. He died in England. So potentially he could, but there's no real concrete evidence that he did. I'd like to think he did. That'd be a really cool story, wouldn't it, Mark? But at the moment, the verdict, the jury's out. It's a strong possibility, but no hard evidence.
Della Woods, Bestwick. I've met Della and her lad and friends at on a hike. They hike in the area, and they saw me just going into my house actually, and shouted over. Again, another big time follower of the page, and YouTube has probably done from the start, I think. Have I ever hiked in flip flops? I'll be honest with you, Della. I've never even worn flip flops. The closest I'll get is my Crocs. Would I hike in Crocs? No. It's always shoes and boots for me. And the people who hike in flip-flops, I don't know what's going off there. I've seen them. I remember, probably a couple of years ago, we went up to the B-29 bomber in February. So Bleak Low's a grim place, as any of you will know. And basically, there's a bloke there in shorts, sliders, I think they call them now, not flip-flops, don't they? Get down with the kids and all that. Him and his missus with Google Maps, wandering around on the top of Bleak Low in a hailstorm looking for the bomber. Absolutely ridiculous. So no, never hiked in flip-flops, never will hike in flip-flops. Don't recommend hiking in flip-flops. Next one, Jo Howe. She's asked a couple here, so I'm going to have to refer back to my phone. So she's put, favourite Peak District pub. My local, the George in Castleton. Fantastic pub, great food, great atmosphere. It's where all the locals drink. So that's a really good pub. I'd highly recommend that to anybody who's in the area. Other favourite pubs, the Barrel Inn over at Bretton. That's a cracking pub with great views over the Peak District. Where else? The Hanging Gate over near Sutton. You get some really good views again over there across the Cheshire Plain from the bottom of Shutlings Low there, the other side of Shutlings Low, near Macclesfield. That's a cracking pub. There's so many good pubs, isn't there, really, in the Peak District, but they're a couple of my favourites. Best hiking boots on a budget. That's a tough one, Joe, because there's some things I don't think you should ever skimp on. And to me, if you're hiking, boots are fundamental to that. I've always worn good quality boots. My boots, I've always liked Scarpas since the 80s when I first started hiking on a regular basis. I used to love my Scarpa Bronzos. At the moment, I've got a pair of Scarpas. I've also got a pair of Merrills as well. So cheap boots, cheap walking boots. Be honest with you, it's the old adage, isn't it? Buy cheap, you buy twice. So I would say, if you can, buy some good boots.
Next one, why is Mamtor known as a shivering mountain? Well, as you know, Mamtor had a big landslip, and actually it is still moving. So there could be the potential for further landslips. So basically, you've got like a whole lot of shale sat, I think, on a limestone bed. So it's always moving. If you ever look at the side of Mamtor, put some images up, you can see all the lines of it and the strata and the rocks, and hence That's why it's still moving. And if you look at a hot day, it looks like it's shivering as well. But shivering because it's moving the landslips that have happened over the years. It's a shivering mountain. Mam Tor also means the Mother Hill. There's a Iron Age hill fort on top as well. But yeah, the Mother Hill is what Mam Tor literally means. Best place for picking mushrooms. Well, depends what mushrooms you're looking for. Because around here, a lot of people like the magic mushrooms. I'm not a huge forager, to be honest with you. I'm sort of mildly interested in it, but I'm no expert. So I wouldn't be able to tell you really. But generally damp woodland's a good thing to find them. You do get things like wax caps and others on this sort of more open pastures, etc. So I recommend buying a good book. I bought a book, I've not really read it, but Roger Phillips' book called Mushrooms. That is the Bible of mushrooms and mushroom picking. So I recommend maybe look into that or join a foraging page. I'm on a few, but I'm no expert on foraging. I'm sort of enthusiastic amateur. Next one, Paul Barron, 7126, I think his ID is. Let me just check it. Yeah, so Paul Barron, 7126 off YouTube. He's asked a barrage of questions. I'll try and rattle through them, Paul, as much as I can. What's your understanding about the existence of the Kinderlow Cavern? Done a little bit digging of this. There was one apparently. You can see it on the old maps, and then people have been and wrote accounts of it. But now apparently it's either collapsed or, I believe, if I learned correctly, is that they actually sort of collapsed the entrance deliberately because it was quite dangerous. So I think it exists. I don't know exactly where it is, but a few people have done YouTube videos on it. I don't know how deep or whatever it is, but if you go and do a bit of digging, you'll find out. But I definitely believe it's there. I believe the entrance is now closed off. I've seen similar things on like Crack and Edge where they've closed off shafts and whatever to stop people entering them and risk to to life basically. Smartwatches and phones, how good are they for navigation? Well, I'll be honest with you, Paul, I use them all the time. I take a map and compass. I know how to use a map and compass, and occasionally I'll try and refresh myself to make sure I don't lose a knack, but I've never had a problem with my phone when I'm out navigating. I've now got, over the last couple of years, the Fenix 7 solar watch that my wife bought me. Love it. Very reliable. I've never had a problem with it. I've never really used the compass on it, to be honest with you. It's just GPS navigation. So I couldn't comment on how reliable the compasses are. I'll probably argue they're probably not as good as a silver compass. I always carry a silver compass and a 1 to 25,000 map in my backpack of the area I'm in. And I always will do, because technology is not infallible. Especially in the cold. I find in very cold weather your batteries don't last very long at all. So I always take a map and compass as backup, but 99% of the time now I use my smartwatch, and I'll use my phone sometimes as well as a backup. Next one, is it a time to strategically place litter bins all over the Peak District, a bit like I do on canals to try and reduce weight? Totally agree on that one, Paul, because the worst areas, although if you're in Castleton you'll see the bins, people just dump it next to the bin if it's full, but yeah, totally agree mate. More strategically placed bins would be a big help, I think. Now you don't want the Peak District covered in bins, but there are certain hot spots that could do with a few more bins, and I think that would make a big difference. Like you say, similar to they do on canals. I guess a lot of it's down to funding and the type of bins. So on the marketplace out here, the bins are quite open, but all the jackdaws get in and pull all the rubbish out. So you can get ones that like self-seal. So again, they're a good idea. Next one is asked, have you used an emergency bivvy bag and are they any good? I've got one. I always take one with me. Fortunately, I've never had to use it, but from what I've seen and what I know of people in mountain rescue who use them, they're an absolute lifesaver. So hopefully I never have to use one, but if I do, then I'm certain they work very well. They've saved enough lives, and I always carry one when I'm out and about. Will the electric motorcycle take off in popularity is his next question. Mate, I don't particularly like them. They're probably very quick, they're probably very economical, but there's something about a motorcycle, the noise, the vibration, the smell, That's what bikes are about, not some clean, clinical electric motorcycle. They will ultimately take off, because you know what? Governments and this mad net zero bollocks, they'll probably just bloody make us and force us to ride them. But we might have all gone Mad Max by then, hopefully, and we'll all be riding some really cool motorcycles. Trick points disappearing. What's the current total in the Peak District? I know of one, definitely, that's disappeared, which was the one on Chinley Churn. I was about the last person to photograph that before the landowner removed it. When I saw it, it was about 45 degrees. So I think there's 88 in the Peak District. That's the only one I know of that's been removed, so I'm thinking we're probably about the 87, but there could be others, so maybe 86, 87 is what's left. Me personally, I think we should make them a protected monument, because that was a massive undertaking, the triangulation of Great Britain and the effort that people went to build those things in some very remote and high locations. You know, they should be, really, shouldn't they? They should be like protected. So, because that one at Chinley Churn, I got hold of the council, they weren't interested. I got hold of the Ordnance Survey, they didn't give a monkeys, because they don't use them anymore. I thought, how sad that. You know, so my view, maybe you should start a campaign. I did speak to Phil Ward about it actually at one time, but it's just the time, isn't it? And where do you focus your efforts? But I certainly think they should be protected, and you know, as a reminder of that huge undertaking. A bit like Ordnance Survey benchmarks, but that's another topic. Here's one. Is there any chance of a supergroup camp with the likes of Hengist, Phil Ward, Paul Mesner, Andy Beavers, Solo, Sarah B, Patrick Dickinson? Mate, I'm not in that league. Me and Phil Ward have been on a camp before. We did a Halloween camp up over on Bradwell Moor at Trig Point. Very damp, very windy camp, but yeah, we had a good time. Hengist possibly at some point. You know, I do like his videos, and the old Champion 7.3. The others, they're Super League, mate. Me, I'm played down here in League 2 or something. So the chances of that happening, it'd be great, absolutely wonderful, but the chances, probably not. Next one, he says, when he looks down from Mantor over the Edel Valley, he just wonders if one day they might fill that as a reservoir. Well, they've looked at reservoirs in the Peak District, because they were looking at extending Ladybower and the Derwent reservoirs, and it was refused, so I don't think so. There's just too much tourism, isn't there? I think they've been asked to look at locations outside the Peak District National Park for future reservoirs. Now it is a national park. I think that makes a big difference. So highly unlikely, hopefully not. Right, he also says he remembers rightly that I have got a copy of the Kindle log by Trevor Nelthorpe. Well, that crash up there then. So yeah, I have actually, and actually Trevor follows a Facebook page. So I'm really sort of honoured by that, because that is the most comprehensive book on Kinder Scout I've ever read. Will I do a review on it? Possibly. I mean, it's out of circulation now, or printing certainly, so to get a copy, you know, you have to sort of go and look for it, and I found mine second hand online somewhere on like Amazon, I think it was, or some bookshop. But it's definitely the most comprehensive list of all the landmarks on Kinder Scout, bit of history behind them, you know, grid references, fantastic book. Highly recommended if you can get a copy. But yeah, I might do a review of that, Paul. He's also asked about Castleton, which is obviously a popular place. What's it like in winter? How do the pubs keep going? Well, there's 7 pubs in Castleton, but in winter it does drop off. You still get the hardcore. It gets quite busy at Christmas as well, with the Christmas light switch on, which happened last week. But yeah, it manages. It makes they must make so much money in summer. It keeps them going through winter. That's how it works. 7 pubs. There's 2 million people a year visit Castleton. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of people. A lot of income's generated. So that's why you can keep 7 pubs open. I try my best to, but I'm only a single soul. It's also asked, do people in the village know each other? Or second homes a problem? There are a large number of second homes. I know the parish council really does consider now if people want to buy them as a second home or a holiday let, because there's a lot. I can't remember exactly how many it is. Got in my head, it's about 60 odd houses. There's 626 people on the electoral roll in the Castleton parish. But yeah, the locals, everyone knows everybody, everyone knows them by name. They all meet up in the George, they have a locals night, they have a bingo every Friday. So yeah, and they've been really welcoming. So yeah, winter it gets a bit quieter, but in summer it's absolute chaos. So it sort of balances out over the year. Oak Cement Works is also mentioned, looks impressive, but he says, you know, does it cause pollution? And you know, how many people does it employ locally? So personally, it's a bit like Marmite. You know, I know a lot of people hate it. I particularly see it as a bit of a landmark now. It's been there since the 1920s. It was the original site. It's scheduled to close in 2043, but I think it'll be extended. So it's almost become part of the landscape. It's been over there over 100 years. And I think it provides 15% of the UK cement, so it's quite critical. I mean, they've done a good job the way the quarry is. You never really see that unless you're right on top of it. It does employ a lot of people locally. I can't remember the exact number. I'll find out and put it up. Pollution issues. If there's any pollution, it probably comes from the trucks, because a lot of they do mention that they're trying to do something about the carbon footprint by bizarrely pumping carbon dioxide into these big heat sinks, carbon sinks, something ridiculous like that. Tell you what the best carbon sink is? A tree. Plant loads of trees, mate. They're taking carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen, and they cost bugger all. All this piping it across the country, it just ought to madness. Right, Peter, Helen Bradshaw, so that's a couple. Do I still metal detect? Sadly not. I mean, I was into my metal detecting, but if you know, it's quite difficult to get permissions. I think I found one round here, but never really found anything. And then I had to make the choice. You know, our cottage is quite small, it's a 2 up, 2 down. I was really getting back into the wild camping, so I basically sold some of my fishing gear and all my metal detecting gear to fund buying the Nortent, which I absolutely love. So sometimes it's a balance. I look back, I've not been metal detecting for well over a year. I find it fascinating because I love history, but I'll get back into it at some point in the future, you never know. But for now, you know, I've focused on what I really love, which is, you know, hiking and camping and history. Next one, Fiona Marshall. He's asked, do you think that tracks and things like that and footpaths and locations hold memories? She's quite a believer, I think, that, you know, they've been to stone circles and that sometimes memories are still there, she senses them. I like to think so. I'm not a believer in ghosts necessarily, although Mrs. Viking says she's seen them, and I don't doubt she hasn't. Why would she say that? But I've watched too many horror movies. But memories being imprinted, you know, I've read books on that in the past. That could make sense, especially if something maybe quite traumatic happens, say, something like that, you know, so that could be the case. When I was at Rolls Royce as an apprentice, and now other people told me this, so it was in my head, and I was only like 16, but one of the places where I worked was bombed in the war and people died there. And occasionally, if you were out the back on the old slitting wheel cutting turbine blades up, you would sense someone coming in the room and stood right behind you. Your hairs would prick up on the back of your neck, and there was never anybody there. Although once this box started moving, it was a bloody stray cat. Fuck me, I shit myself. But yeah, I'm you know, potentially Fiona. You know, why not? We're all like energy, aren't we? Got that energy, leave an imprint. If something was like had a strong connection or something traumatic happened, who knows? Potentially. Karen Twells and Dave Rowley are both raised this one. Where's my favourite spot in the peaks to chill out and walk? And for me, it has been since I was a kid. The first time I went up there, I think it was on a night hike actually with scouts. It's Kinder Scout. You know, I know it's a lot more popular these days, but you get on the northern edge, places like that. You're in the middle of nowhere. So peaceful. So it can be so quiet, and there's so much variation over the year in the weather, the wildlife, the colours. So, you know, Kinder Scout really does hold a soft spot for me, and that's my go-to place if I get the chance to go up there. I mean, at the moment, I've not been up for quite a while, so I think I probably should go up again. I think it might have been the last winter, I think was the last time I went up there, but that holds a special place. That's my go-to place if I wanted to go somewhere away from the madding crowds. Dave Rowley's also asked, do OS benchmarks really exist? And to tell you the reason for this, I put the video up about OS benchmarks and finding them. They're the little like lines that they used when they were basically what they call levelling. They level the whole of Great Britain is quite important. I've done a whole video on it. I'll put a link up at the top there. But he's been looking for 8 of them locally. He can't find one. They get worn. Buildings get replaced over time. I found I went out the other week. Half the ones I looked for I couldn't find. Just keep looking, mate. They do exist. It's not a conspiracy theory, I promise you. So yeah, that wraps up the Q&A session. Thanks for all those submitted questions. Hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into myself and the Peak District and what I like about it and why I do what I do. Maybe if you have any more, let me know and we may do a follow-up. So for now, I'll see you on the next video.